Hello, today we're gonna talk about some of these questions here. So there are basically three main types of relatives. So let me call them like this: where category, subjective category, and objective category. So in the where category, the thing is a background, right? In this background, something else happens. Right? It's always like this. And in subjective category, the noun becomes the subject. It has the subjective meaning, right? And this subject is doing something by itself, right? And in the objective meaning, someone else or something else is doing something to it, right? So there are three basic types of relatives like these. Okay, let's try some of the questions here. Let me erase those real quick. Okay, let's take this over here, and let's try to identify the noun in the box and the sentence that is connected to the noun. Do you see any noun in the box here, right? Then maybe from here to here is the sentence that follows. So roughly it would be translated into Korean like 뭐뭐 하는 학생들, right? 뭐뭐 하는 학생들. We can all do that, right? But the question is decide which one to use, right? Who or whom. So what's the difference here? Who is a subject? Whom is an object, right? So what I want you to do is to decide between these two based on the situation. So I want to actually draw a picture of these two. Okay, so if a sentence starts with some students who, right? Some students who, as we did it earlier, it's always like this, and we all know that 뭐뭐 하는 학생들 is the translation. The second case, some students whom. So in this case also, we all know that it goes like this, and it also means 뭐뭐 하는 학생들. So what's the difference? So some students who, in who means who is subject and whom is object. That's the difference. And if we were to draw a picture of this, it would look like this, right? Some students who means the students were doing something by themselves, right? Some students who. So some of the examples that comes to my mind would be 달리고 있는, 학생들, 공부하고 있는 학생들, 책상에 앉아 있는, etc., etc. Right? So these are subjective sentences that could modify the noun. How about the second one? Some students whom 뭐뭐 하는 학생들. Here we can picture 학생들 in our mind, but at this time something is very different because these 학생들 isn't doing something. Some other people or some other person is doing something, right? Affecting or doing something to these students. So in this case, these students are object. In this case, these students are subject, right? Do you see the difference? So in this case, we could come up with sentences like 선생님들이 말을 건 학생들. These students are objective, right? 다른 친구들이 좋아하는 학생들, right? Do you see the difference here? So we don't really need to read this blah 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 part before we know which one we should use, right? So up to here, even if we read up to here, it would determine the situation already. Okay, so if we said some students who, then the situation would look like this. But if we said some students whom, the situation would look like this. Okay, do you see what I'm saying here? Okay, let's get back to the question here. So we didn't even see this blah 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 part, right? We only saw who and whom, and we guessed which way it might go, right? Some student, if we said some student who, then it might go like 달리고 있는, 공부하고 있는, 책상에 앉아 있는, something that some students would do, right? If the sentence would go whom, some students whom, then the sentence would go this way, like 선생님이 말을 거는 학생들, 다른 친구들이 좋아하는 학생들, right? You get that objective feeling, right? Okay, so now we so up to this part, and then we see this part stayed late. Here it means 늦게 남았던, right? So here we need to decide that 늦게 남았던 falls into this category or this category. 늦게 남았던 is it something that the students were doing, or is it something others that others did to the students? What do you think? Yes, this one is correct, right? So 늦게 남았던 학생들. If you said that, that means some students stayed late. They did that. So we should use the subjective, right? It's who. Of course, you might think that who is a subjective and we have a verb here. We don't really need to know that. Some might think that, but if you want to learn English better, you might need to think all this first. Okay, so don't get very obsessed with getting questions right, answering the right answers, but please be focused on the real actual things that you need to know in English. Okay, let's move on. So we don't have time for all of this, so let me pick some of the sentences and try them. Okay, which one? So this one we did it earlier, but let's do it again. The country is noun in the box, right? Then we have a sentence that goes like this. So if you say the country where, then you have this feeling that the country is the background, right? And if the sentence goes the country which, then it could go either way, subject or object, right? Where goes to the situation. Okay, let's draw a little picture over here then. So if the country where is the correct answer, then images like this would come up to your mind. A country, this is India, right? Where, then the country is the background and something happens in the country, right? This is the country where, what the country where indicates. Whereas the country which might indicate two things, right? The country India might invade some other country, right? So in this case, India is a subject. It is invading some other country. So the country which could mean something like this, if which is the object, and the country which could mean something like this, right? This is India, and some people or something could do something to India, right? In this case, it's objective, right? Do you see what's the difference here? Here is the situation, subject, object, right? So before you even read this part, we already have many things that comes to our mind, right? The country where, then you have this feeling that the country is the background. If you said the country which, then we have this sense, we have this feeling that the country itself does something or someone else does something to the country, because which could be either way, right? So we need to think about this, consider these three one by one, right? Here, of course, we have studied. So which one do you think is right? The country where, 그 나라에서 공부했어요. The country which, 그 나라를 내가 공부했어요. Both are right. Right? So in this case, where and which are both right. Okay, now let's do this one and let's call it a day. It took too much time, so let's say this is the last one. Here we have the house, which were blah 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 blah. So we all know that this means 뭐뭐뭐한 집. Right? We all can do this, right? But in grammatical questions, we are often asked which one is correct. In this case, let's say the house, which first? The house, which? Okay, let's do the same thing we did up here, right? So if you were to picture the house which in your mind, what would the picture be? The house which blah blah blah. So which could either way, so if it's subjective, then the house itself is doing something, right? It might have a wheel and move around, right? Or it is broken, or it could fly in the air, whatever it is. The house does something. Right? So this is the subjective which. How about if the house which means objective? So what kind of picture would you come up with? So if it's objective, someone else or something else is doing something to the house, right? So in this case, it is object, right? Okay, let's move on now to the case that the house where is correct. So if the sentence goes like this, then pictures like this come to our mind, right? This is a house and house is the background, and then in the house something is happening. This is what the house where means, right? Okay. So the house which, the house where is the question here. And if we now see the sentence here, Antonio Gaudi built in 1910, right? So which one do you think is right? By the way, Antonio Gaudi was a Spanish architect. He is very famous. So 안토니오 가우디가 지었던 집, right? 안토니오 가우디가 지었던 집. 안토니오 가우디가 지었던 집. Which category do you think this falls in? 안토니 가우디가 지었던 집. What do you think? Right, this one. Right? 안토니오 가우디가 지었던 집. So it is, the house is object. Then you should use which. Right? This is the correct answer. Where is not the correct answer. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much. Good job.